Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are back from our lunch break at the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship live stream presented by Scrabble Go. I am expert player Morris Greenberg, and I'm here with expert Matt Kanek. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right, Morris. How are you?
Doing well. We saw a whole range of games this morning. We saw a huge blowout game. We saw at the end of the day kind of a grinding game where players kept trading 30, 40 point game plays for a while. We saw a comeback game. We saw an almost comeback game. It kind of was the full range this morning. So excited to see three more games this afternoon.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm really excited for this one here. We've got a matchup featuring Andy Hong versus Michael Fagan. Michael and I go way back. Michael is from Montreal, Quebec, and every time I'm up in Canada, we make a point to meet up and play some games. So I know his game well. I know him well. And Andy Hong is a former two-time junior or school Scrabble championship. He won, I believe, in his fifth grade year and maybe again in his eighth grade year. And he's still stuck with it now. He's much older now, but he's making an appearance on board one at the Scrabble Players Championship, trying to win an adult title. So very excited for this matchup. Should be a great game.
Yeah, Eddie Hong is actually in first place right now. He started off the day 4-0, and there are only three 4-0 people in the top division, and I think Michael's 3-1 right behind. So trying to, catch Andy.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting tournament so far. Some of the early favorites, Will Anderson, who's won this tournament before, Jackson Smiley, who's coming off a big victory at the World Cup, Kenji Matsumoto. They're all not having such hot starts. Kenji, Jackson, and Will are all 1-3 to begin this tournament. Joey Krafchick, I'll shout out, is in second place at 4-0. And third place is Jeff Fishbane. So of the three undefeateds, we have Andy Hong, Joey Krafchick, and Jeff Fishbane, with Michael Fagan fourth place, 3-1 with the top spread of the available players.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see. I mean, I think day one, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't go your way, if you go like 3-4 or something like that. But it definitely, you'd prefer to go at least 4-3. So all three of those guys who are 1-3 are trying to sweep the afternoon. If you're already 4-0, obviously you want to keep up that advantage. So it looks like Michael has drawn tiles to go first, and he has picked up a blank and shuffling tiles around. What do you like so far?
Oh, he's absolutely going to be bingoing out of this rack. I believe it's just a matter of choosing the right one, unless I've lost my mind. Maybe these aren't words. It's
I
been a
think
minute since I've played some Scrabble.
so. I think Valonia is might be the only one in there.
Yeah, okay,
Let's
that's
go
the one I
actually.
saw. Yeah, so Valonia is he's the lone seven for Michael Fagan. He's an expert player. I'm certain he's going to see it. You can see he's already got it lined up on his rack. And placement's going to be pretty standard on this one. You're going to put that V on the double letter. Michael Fagan off to a hot start. He's going to open this game up with a big lead on Andy Hong.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want when you're board one for the first time. A bingo where you could, easily sink your teeth. And do you think he's wondering the validity at all or something? He is taking a bit long and staring at it.
I mean, as I've mentioned a few times already today, playing on stream is very hard, and so Michael is probably having this moment right now, a little bit of anxiety. I've been there, and I think almost anybody who's been on board one at the Nationals since we brought streaming up about 6 years ago has been there too, where all of a sudden everything you think you know, you might not know. But it looks like he is going with his gut correctly. He's going to drop down Valonia as long as he designates his blank correctly, and we'll watch that for a moment. Yep, he's got the A circled. Valonia for 76 gets Michael off to a good start on this game.
Yeah, and so meanwhile, Andy has some heftier tiles, we'll say, but he at least has the Q and the U together, which can score well.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of Qs on rack one. I wonder if this bag is getting shaken well. But yeah, Andy is fortunate to have a U to go with it, though not seeing any incredible options. I see Aqua down to or from the A. He can just drop Q, U, A to the blank in Valonia as well. Not really excited to hold on to that V, but when you've got the Q and the V together, it's tough to break that up.
Well, if you want to burn, if you're okay burning the S, he has Shuk, SUQ, right above the O and I in Bologna as well.
Oh, yes, he
That does
does.
score a bit more, but yeah, the S can be valuable for sure. So it's understandable if he doesn't play that.
You can tell right now he's looking at Aqua, and again, board one paralysis has to be intense right now. I didn't see Shook initially, but yeah, that's going to be a really hefty 49 points. Unload the queue. ANVP is not the most ideally for Andy, but we're gonna 49 points is 49 points. I think he's gonna have to do it if he sees it. There he goes. He's got Shook set up. It's probably going to come down in just a minute. There's not too much else to consider on a turn like this.
Yeah, so good find by Andy, and he will score 49. And that really, like, he's down only 27 now. You'd think after a bingo you have so much cushion if the other player doesn't bingo, but, high scoring is high scoring regardless of if you use 7 tiles or 3 tiles.
Correct. It's worth noting Valonia does take an S on the end. You can pluralize that, so the S is going to be consequential this game, I think, after a play like that. That's going to kind of fork off the top of the board and make it tough to get up there. Michael's got an interesting rack. Initially, I'm seeing like Ziram or Mirza through the A. None of those leave super great stuff. There's Vizier as well from the V, holding YUM. So Michael's got some options. We're just seeing power tiles go real quick in this game. We've already seen a blank, an S, and a Q played, and now we're probably going to see a Z as well.
Yeah, and just to backtrack for a second, what Matt was saying with the top right of the board kind of being shut down, it's just that QI can't really take anything in front of it. So the only way we can access, we often like to think of the board in quadrants. So the top right quadrant of the board is with an S for Valonians. That's literally the only way right now. So he plays Vizier, which opens the bottom left quadrant of the board. We're fans of the play.
So Andy's going to be able to respond by overlapping on the left side of Vizier. Initially jumping out to me, he can play Pave or Paved. He's also got Pavan, Pavan. All of those seem like decent options for him to get rid of that VPA kind of clunk. He can also consider Pavan in other places. Morris, anything jump out to you on this turn?
Yeah, I think all of the things you were saying are reasonable. I mean, Pave probably is the natural play. If you think Michael's likely to keep a D, R, or S, then Paved maybe, just because it would open up a lane in the triple that you can extend to paved paper or paves.
Right, right. And it is scary opening up. If you just play Pave, there are so many letters that go behind it, the D, the R, and the S, that there's a good chance Michael will be sitting on one and will get access to that triple word score. But if he doesn't, then Andy's able to jump on it. So that's a decision he's probably thinking about right now is do I want to be aggressive and just play Pave and set up this hook and gamble? Or do I want to take the extra 4 points right now and play Paved instead?
Yeah, or Pavan for that matter. I mean, DE as a leave instead of AN does have a bit more synergy. So even though Pavan scores 2 fewer points than Pave, uh, both are reasonable. I think, as I've said before, I often like to think about my Scrabble turn in a 3 turn sequence, how many points I score this turn, how many points I can allow for my opponent next turn, and how good are the letters I keep for my scoring the turn after that. And so,
Correct.
yeah, so Paved scores 2 more this turn than Pavan, but Pavan leaves a better lead of DE for my next turn.
It looks like Andy may also be considering Panada through the A, Panada, making ZA. That's going to score well, but going to open up some very interesting dynamics for later in this game by having that S hook available where you can pluralize it and hit that double word going the other way at the same time. So that's another option for Andy to consider. My inclination is just to score points, clear up the rack, and play Pavan on the left side of Vizier. That does slot the in and the triple line, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make at this point in the game. We'll see if Andy feels the same way.
Yeah, Panada is a really nice idea. He might even going Pavan through that A as well because he. Oh, I guess he now moved the A over. For a sec, he had ADE separated. Uh, but yeah, Panada is a very interesting idea. I mean, you need to be pretty sure your opponent doesn't have the X, and on Vizier, I don't know if you can conclude that necessarily in either direction. So I think Pavan seems like, even though it opens a triple, as Matt said, in a lot of ways, I think it's safe.
So Andy does elect with the play I chose as well, Pavan. It's a tough play to make because of that triple triple, and you could absolutely justify some other plays, paved, Panada. They're all pretty close, and really it's going to come down to what your opponent has and what you end up drawing. Kind of feels like rolling dice with plays like that. But I don't see any immediate big response from Michael. Do you see anything, Morris?
No, I'm not. At least not in that spot. I have been looking. You're naturally, I think, drawn to the new big triple spot whenever that becomes available. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything there right away.
Yeah, he does have scoring options. I believe Mankey is a word through that A, but that's going to leave just the disgusting UUT, which is going to lead to issues next turn. So Michael's left with the decision now of do I score a whole bunch right now and score very little next turn because of this abysmal leave, or do I try to find a more happy balance in here? This is tough. I bet Michael spends a good amount of time really considering his options here.
Yeah, it is tough. So the two main plays probably are Make, as Matt pointed out, or Tunny through the end from Pavan, Tunny. Uh, yeah, it's 17 fewer points, but again, MUK at least can score off in the next turn. UUT, you know, hope for drawing umlauts or something, but if you can't do
Right.
that, then you're kind of
Yeah.
stuck.
Yeah, I'm inclined to play Tunney here of those two options. It just keeps a more stable leave and allows you to do something next turn. I can't help but feel like this board is going to have to get opened up soon. There's not a ton of possibilities right now, but there will be. Somebody's going to draw that S for Valonias and make something happen. So you'd like to, if possible, keep stuff for when this board does open up.
Yeah. And one other thing to remember is that U's become less valuable once the Q is played, especially how the Q is played here, where we can't make another QU word after. So, really, like, the U's are already not a great tile without the Q when the Q isn't seen. When the Q's already been seen, it's even worse.
44.
So, I understand that feeling by Matt, but 17 extra points is a lot, and that's what Michael goes with here.
We'll see where that UUT ends up taking him. A couple I's, he's in trouble. Another U, he's in trouble. But there are definitely ways he can get out of it. It looks like Andy had set up Algicide, but with a Y. I don't think he was thinking of playing that. I think he was simply oh, wow. He is going to try to play Algicide, but with a Y instead. That is, to my knowledge, not a real word. I do know Michael Fagan has a really tough time challenging words. It might be one of his big weakness. It doesn't look like Andy's on hold. Andy's drawing his tiles, and he's going to get away with a nice phony bingo here out of what would otherwise be a really tough rack. Wow, big break in Andy's favor on this game. That took guts to do. I wonder if Andy thinks it's a word or if he knows the book on Michael Fagan. But tiles are out of the bag. That play is going to stand. Wow.
Uh, yeah, I think Andy also played that absurdly quick. if he was thinking of phoning there, um, and man, that's if he thought it was a phony, that's just a great poker face by Andy, just like slapping it down right away, kind of insta playing it and psyching Michael out completely.
Yeah. I mean, that is the book on Michael. I've definitely gotten some things by him before. He's a very solid player who knows words well, and he doesn't seem to have quite the
22.
confidence to challenge, especially on board one. Man, it is so hard. And this is huge. Michael plays Tune, which is definitely a fine play, but Andy's terrible rack, I believe, is going to get bailed out by Twerp through that E for 39 points. So another big break for Andy. It's looking like it's going to start to snowball here. Wow, just two good breaks in a row.
Yeah, like one thing that everyone says
Oh,
that Nigel Richards is the best player in Scrabble, but the one thing that he sometimes could do even better is he doesn't ever phony basically. And we see that like if you are able to phony sometimes, it can be a huge advantage. It goes from being a 30-point play on a turn to a 70 or 80-point play like Andy showed.
so
So,
Michael's drawn into Bedouins. He already sees it, and he's got two spots for it. He
yeah.
can play Twerps. He can play Valonias. I think the Twerp spot will score just a little bit more, so he's probably going to go with that. But we're seeing fireworks here. This is a change of pace from the previous game, round four, where Lisa and John Karras both just could not draw racks that were conducive to scoring. Now we're just seeing explosions of points.
So Bedouins is coming down now, and so that will give Michael the lead again. Michael was up for a bit, then Andy got that phony pass to take the lead, and now Michael has roughly a 60-point lead after this play of Bedouins.
Andy's got a fun option here. He could consider just playing Jug through the U and Bedouins. It leaves a very good leave of title, but Jug does take an S and a back A as well. So he would set himself up, but if Michael pulls one of those tiles as he has, then that could explode
Well,
backwards.
Michael did draw the X as well, and he just created a spot where the X could go two ways on a triple letter score. So Michael has a 50-plus point play in store for himself next turn if Andy doesn't take that spot. But yeah, Jug is a cool idea for sure this turn.
Yeah, this is very interesting. It's crazy knowing both players' racks at once because sometimes you want to shout through your screen, don't do that, but they have no idea of knowing. This is interesting for Andy for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to monitor is there were just two more bingos that came down, but they kind of took out all the lines with each other because they're parallel to each other. So it's very hard to make 8-letter words via either of them. They'd have to be 9-letter words. And we can see that because of the things like the V on Valonian Vizier and the SUQ place, the top left part of the board is basically inaccessible. And Andy needs to be really careful now that he's down by over 70 points. He needs to be really careful about making an intentional play that doesn't constrict the board too much.
That's why I think a play like Jug would be so appropriate for him to make. Keep that good leave, open up another spot. It is very, very risky is the big problem.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I guess from Andy's perspective, there are 5 A's unseen and 2 S's unseen and a blank. Uh, Yeah, I don't know if I do that. It seems, I mean, granted, his options are limited here. So, given his set of options, it might have to be the play, but it just seems like going Hail Mary too soon to some extent, I feel like.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. I'm just not seeing much in terms of other options for Andy at this point. And Jug is going to maybe work out to his advantage as Michael is sitting on Oxo right now for a bunch of points next to Bedouins. Um, so Jug is going to partially obstruct that and force Michael to just play Ox or Fox. This is tough, though.
Yeah, I mean, so one option to open up the left side of the board is a nice underlap of digital through the I in Vizier, making at LA and Sol, SOL, uh, keeping the J as one tile. It scores only 20, and it does open up a kind of risky triple lane, but that would start opening up the entire other side of the board as a kind of option that he could consider if he doesn't want to kind of go the Jug Hail Mary route.
It it's not as hard as you think. I feel to open this board. Whatever letter goes behind PI next to Vizier and Pavan, whatever letter ends up going there is going to dictate a lot about this game. If that letter is a C, if you make pick, well, we've got epic hooks that you set up. If that's a T, you set up another S line to front hook it with spit. But if it's something like a G, oh man. Well, Andy just took care of all of that. He plays Jig, so it's a similar version of Jug, but it doesn't open anything up. And that's tough because really there's just the one bingo line accessible to Andy that's on the right side of Bedouins, and it's gone away now. So Andy needs a big pull here, I think, to stay in this game. He's going to need a bingo next to Oxo. Here's the E he needed and an I. That's not going to do it for him.
Yeah, it's not quite there. So he's down over 100 now. I mean, it's a tough position for him.
And I think
I don't know what I would do. Yeah.
this is where a play like Jig is just so killer. I mean, you can't expect a 50-point X bomb, and you can't play like he's going to, get hit with a 50-point X bomb. But Jig just killed a board in a game where you're already down. The S is going to be absolutely essential, I think, at this point for Andy to draw for Valonia's. Without that, I don't think he has much of a chance to get himself back in. But he's going to have to decide now, do I break up this bingo prone rack to try to open up the board? Or do I just stick with it and run? It's I don't know what Andy does in this situation, but I
I
think
mean,
Jig kind of did him in.
a gate under the AG from Jig and Valonia does score 36 points. That's, I mean, it doesn't help with board dynamics at all, but 36 points is 36 points.
36 points is 36 points. That is a fact, brought to you by Morris Greenberg, commentating alongside Matt Canick at the Scrabble Players Championship, which serves essentially as the North American Championship for competitive Scrabble. This is day
So,
one of a 5-day tournament. This is round five. 31 total games will be played between the players here in Baltimore, Maryland. And we've seen some really high level Scrabble so far. If y'all are having fun, if you're new to the game of Scrabble, check out the chat on Twitch. We've got some resources for you to learn how to play more competitively, both online or in person, in a club or more competitive tournament formats. Give it a check out if you're seeing Scrabble played for the first time. We'd love to have you.
yeah, so Andy had Tailed and now Iliad set up. So I think he's kind of lasered in on the lane that Michael just created, making Bod from BO. And which is reasonable. I mean, that is the like the most easy scoring high point lane available at this point. Even though those two plays score less than a gate, it keeps better leaves and starts to open up the top part of the board. So I completely understand those kinds of moves.
This is tough. There are exactly two spots to make plays that are relevant to the future of this game. One is backhooking Valonia and making a play down in that row, and the other is right next to Oxo. And Andy doesn't want to close that spot off, but there's not really a way for him to make another one. And if he leaves it alone, Michael is probably going to score a substantial amount of points next turn. So Andy, I'm sure, does not want to make this play, but he feels he needs to make this play. And so that's what he does. He plays tailed, scores a lot of points to prevent Michael from scoring a lot of points. And I think that's probably a fine thing to do in this situation.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I agree. It's exactly the sort of thing that he has to hope works out. I'm also wondering, are there any three-letter front hooks to tailed? I guess is like red tailed a word.
Red
I
tailed,
guess
I don't like that for a second. No.
28.
yeah. Well, I guess it doesn't matter now because well, actually, fan tailed was available this turn.
Oh wow,
Gloriously enough.
Fantailed. Dang. Yeah, that's
That's,
Fantail's a 7. I'm certain Michael knows, but does he know that you can put an ed on the end? And then would you even
yeah.
think to find that word?
Yeah, so Frena is still a good idea, though. It does close down a lot of those lanes Andy just created and scores 28. So,
Andy hugely has pulled the S that he needed to get back into this game. He doesn't have a bingo that is 7 letters long that plays next to Valonia now, but at least he has the S to try to make this happen down the road. He might be able to score a lot of points making Doc or DOH in the bottom right go down to that triple word. He's got some options to score now, but crucially, he needs that S, and he has it. So this is not game over, not by a long shot, and I'm excited to see what Andy does to try to get back into this game.
yeah, and one option down to the triple that preserves the S actually is Ethic, making DOE. That does score 37 points. In this sort of situation, Andy is down by 111, so he needs not only a bingo, but high scoring plays on top of that. So it will be interesting. He could make a play like How off of the W and Twerks for fewer points, only 25 points, to keep a really strong lead with CEIST to almost guarantee a bingo in the next two turns, or he could blow it up a bit more and go for 12 more points for Ethic and just hope for the best.
Yeah, this is tough. He's definitely going to take some time to go over every possible 5-letter word he can make in that spot. He originally set up Chose, and Chose is the highest scoring option he's got there, but really don't want to get rid of that S in a game where you're down and there's a huge S spot. He may end up having to bite the bullet and play it if he doesn't want to play Ethic, just to score some more points and hope and pray that he does pull that fourth S, the final S. But I don't think that's something he wants to do. I think Ethic is the right thing to do. It's the right mix of scoring, but then also retaining an S.
Yeah, well, he's shifting back and forth between Chose and Ethic. Chose is 11 more points, so it's a 48-point play. It's a tough decision point here. I mean, the one thing I'll say about Chose is after Ethic, he'll still be down close to 70 points. He'll need a bingo and extra stuff to get past Michael because with just a bingo, Michael will still have a tempo advantage of 20 to 30 points for each turn by having a first move advantage. With Chose, he'll need to draw more of the right stuff immediately, but he won't need to consider the tempo part of it too. He would just need a bingo. And so maybe he's thinking about, you know, if I play Chose now, I need to draw the right stuff. If I play Ethic now, I probably still need to draw the right stuff anyways, so why not take the points?
Yeah, an additional option Andy had that turn was HOW to the W in twerps. Thanks to Noah for pointing that out in the chat. That's really putting all my eggs in my basket. I'm leaving the best possible leave. CEIST is really synergistic with itself. You're going to bingo a very high percentage of the time, but you're scoring a little bit less in order to make that happen. So it's tough. I don't know what I would have chosen in there. Probably depends on my mood. There's certainly merit to each of those plays, Chose, Ethic, and How. But Andy is now very reliant on that last S to get back into this game. And Michael's probably trying to figure out what he can do to address that Valonia's hook without sacrificing too many points to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, he does have other it's interesting. I feel like that Z, even though it looks obstructing, there's often little plays that these players have been able to make. I think Zeta is an option this turn, or ZEE, are probably close to his highest scoring plays. Uh, but yeah, I understand that it's probably better to be more intentional with your turn and try to block the key area where your opponent can really claw back. But it's hard to do.
If nothing else, I'd like to, as Michael, at least think about addressing the R in Frenna, knocking out any way that Andy can bingo and get back into this game. But it's difficult because the only consonants Michael has are D and R, and most plays are going to string a D or an R somewhere that Andy can bingo to them anyway. So what's the point of blocking an R that Andy can bingo to if you just give him another R that he can bingo to? It's kind of frustrating to try to play some defense here. But he's got options. He can play like ERA next to Frenna, making ER, Ret, and Anna. Things like that, just to close off some of the board if he so chooses. But that Valonia hook, again, is going to be huge. If I'm Michael, too, I think part of what I'm concerned about is Andy didn't spend a ton of time on shows. So what are the odds that he held a second S? I'm trying to play that game with myself right now. Does he already have it, or did he think really hard and play his only S and hope he pulls another one? So probably all of this is going through Michael's head right now. Of course, we know the answers and he doesn't. It's much easier to sit on this side of the camera than be down there. Michael looks like he is just going to play like Z or Z or Zeta something over there.
Yeah, he looks like he's opting for Z. I mean, he was holding three E's before it. I think he's basically saying, you know what? I'll give you one turn to try to get a bingo. I'll just keep as good of bingo tiles as possible. I still have more than a bingo lead on you. There's a good shot I can bingo right after you bingo, and then I'm in business. And he picked up the
That's
blank. So
huge. Michael's picked up the second blank, and that's going to make it very difficult for Andy to get back into this game. Andy's, of course, going to have to keep trying to open the board, but Michael is probably just going to bingo in response to it, and that's going to be more or less game over.
yeah, so it looks like he has where set up WAIR off the R in Frenna. I mean, it's a reasonable play. Getting rid of a W and an I is something that you always want to do in these sorts of situations. But uh, yeah, and he's also switched to Iota, which scores a few more. Uh, that would go parallel to the F, R, E, and N in Frenna. and iota does take a front hook of a B for biota, but it's hard to end a 7-letter word with a B if he were to try it.
And I really think a lot of what Andy's feeling right now all comes back to that pivotal play of jig, because that made it nearly impossible to get to the top left side of this board at all. And he knew already he was in a situation where he might need to bingo. Of course, again, he didn't know the X play for 50 was coming, but he was already down. And it's really tough. I don't know what you're supposed to do with that rack, but that's just a consequence of a play like jig. Is this board is not going to get back open without significant manipulation now.
Yeah, well, he might be trying a phony of Waitor.
I
W
love that. I love that. I think
W
that's
A I
exactly what
T
Andy
O
needs to
R.
do. And if you're Michael, that is so hard to challenge too, because, well, if Andy does draw a bingo, he's going to bingo again. If you challenge, you lose a turn. Andy draws a bingo and bingo's back. Like, it's a tie game now. So I honestly, in this situation, playing against him, you've already snuck algicide spelled incorrectly by him. I might have tried that, honestly. I think that's my best chance to win this game. And if it backfires, if he challenges, fine. But I would have given it a go.
39 is actually.
Oh, did I mess up?
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I feel like Waitor or Waitors for that matter with an S is so much more probable of a word that if Michael hadn't like that one, I could see Michael challenging almost instantly a lot more often than Algicide, which looks like a lot of things and is lower down in your study list most likely. You don't like studying those GYC words in general. You definitely like studying those ORSTA kind of words. So
I would have done it. Y'all can call me crazy. I would have done it 10 times out of 10 in this situation. I think that's something I only do against a small number of opponents. But I think Andy was playing against the one. Andy, ironically enough, has drawn Waitor again. So that's he can think about making that play again. It'll score a lot less, but it is there.
yeah, this actually complicated the position a lot more for Michael by playing Iota, just because before it was likely he was going to get a bingo. Now he needs to figure out, okay, I'm in the driver's seat here, but I don't have a bingo right away. How do I approach this turn? And I definitely know, like, I sometimes feel very comfortable once I get the blink and I have a lead, and then I keep fishing off a few tiles, not getting the draw I want, and then my opponent bingos, and all of a sudden it's the end of the game and I can't bingo, and it's not the blink isn't that helpful anymore to me.
I think on Michael's turn there, I would have played Ruana, R-U-A-N-A, to the A-N-A, just to get rid of that pesky Valonia's hook once and for all. There is still one unseen S. The only real way I lose is if Andy bingo's there and I can't hit him back and some other bad stuff happens. So I would have addressed it, but there's nothing wrong with what Michael did either. He's keeping his rack very, very flexible, so that if the board does open up, and you have to imagine it does, given where Andy's at in this game score-wise, he's going to be able to hit back. He has two bingos with an S as that blank, Asunder and Dansur, but neither one is going to fit in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is Michael, by scoring that many points that turn on Ha for 25, he just maintains a very comfortable lead. Even if Andy bingos on this board, it's not going to be enough to get to an 83-point deficit. So I like the idea of, you know what, scoring a few tiles, right, scoring well. Ruana scored only 10 points versus 25. Sacrificing 15 points there changes worst case scenarios a lot.
Andy set up a toe on his rack. I'm pretty sure he's thinking about playing Towage to the AGE. That's going to set up the front hook of Stowage. I think that's exactly what he needs to do to get back into this game. It's probably honestly going to be too little too late, but you have to take that shot if you can. So I hope that's what Andy plans on doing with those letters. I'd imagine it is. And we'll see what he's able to do from there. Really, he's just going to get bingoed back on by Michael because Michael's maintained that rack flexibility. But it's a good thought. It's a good idea.
Yeah, the even crazier idea of an extension is Arowana, Arowana, is available. So I don't think he's going to see that right now. But yeah, I think Towage would be cool. He might be. He has War set up. I'm wondering if he's going to do Wart Ahi and Rad off of. Yeah, it looks like that's what he's playing now. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I guess he's just Michael has been playing short the past few turns, so maybe he's going to wait for Michael to try to open up while he claws back and scores a bit. He's in a tough position any way you cut it, so all of these options are going
There
to
it
be.
is. He got the S. He got oh. You can tell Andy picked up the letters. He wanted an E. He wanted an A. He wanted to try to bingo, and he picked up the T. Andy's not even putting it on his rack right now. There it goes. Michael sees underages. Is he gonna burn a blank for a non-bingo here? I think he is.
Yeah.
So Michael's going to
Wow.
score a double-double. It's going to be a lot of points for him still, and it's going to be enough that even if Andy bingos, and he's not going to this turn, Michael's going to win this game anyway.
Yeah, underages is an interesting idea. I mean, it's 48 points, so it will give him quite the lead.
Yeah.
And
How many tiles are in the bag right now, Morris?
so after underages, there will be less than 7. So Andy couldn't get 2 bingos even after underages.
Yeah, so after underages, Michael's going to be up about 140 points. Even if Andy does hit like a 90-point bingo with Valonias, that's it. It looks like Andy is holding the play, thinking maybe underage could just be an adjective. He's also dead, if this is a word. There's absolutely no chance he's going to win. So this is something you'll see in Scrabble a lot, where a player is almost certain a word is good, but they might challenge it anyway just because you have to take that shot to try to win the game. So Andy's thinking, obviously spread or point margin is a thing, but it looks like Andy is going to pull the challenge. And I bet if you ask him, he's 95% sure this is good, but you have to try. So we're seeing
Yeah.
the players, they're getting up, they're walking to a computer that has the entire dictionary loaded into it. They're going to type in this play, these words, and we know because we're on a computer already that this is going to come back acceptable. Michael very happy about that, running back to the table, getting ready to get this game over with, and move up to 4-1 at the Scrabble Players Championship.
Yeah, so it's the kind of play that your best shot of winning is it being invalid. He has less than a 10% chance of winning after underages. And if it stays on the board anyway, so might as well hope if you're only 90% sure it's good.
So I don't blame Andy for that at all. It is going to definitely cost him significant spread or point differential, but you do what you have to do to try to win the game. Andy probably wants to try to fish one tile. There's very little Michael's going to be able to do about the Valonia's hook now, so he might just drop a T or something, depending on what's in the bag, and see if he's able to draw that bingo. Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting because off of the AR in Pavan and Vizier, he could make a tar and set up a star hook potentially. And he has the last S, remember, and there are no blanks remaining. So that seems like the kind of play he could make, but it probably is too little too late.
It's certainly too little too late, but hey, that small moral victory, and there's something in Scrabble too, man, about setting up a spot that your opponent's not going to be able to do almost anything about. It's all for you to just sit there and fish for your bingo. It just feels nice. So that'd be a play he can make, but more or less this game's done.
32.
Yeah.
Michael's going to drop down oof for a gazillion points, 32 points a gazillion. It's about the same number. But he's going to hold on to win this game, certainly. I do want to give a quick shout out to my fellow Texan, Mariah Smith. In game 4, a player could have potentially front hooked Handy to make Shandy. And I quipped that, hey, I could go for a summer Shandy right now. 30 minutes later, my doorbell rings. DoorDash had delivered little summer Shandy to my door. Compliments of Mariah. So thank you so much. That was not something I was expecting, getting to stream all day. But shout out to Mariah for the little summer Shandy gift basket. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, the commentators work hard, always up for a refreshing beverage.
I think Morris is making a plug for himself right now, too. If anybody
Nah,
has
nah,
his address.
it's
Just
all
kidding.
good. I don't give out my address on stream.
Probably for the best that you don't. Morris, how many tiles are in the bag right now?
So there's one in the bag right now. So Andy can play Tar here to set up Star or as an option, and there are three E's unseen to him, and one of those is the E in the bag. So if he does play Tar, he'll have Toilers in or Loiters in two spots.
Yeah, Eliorst makes loiters, toilers, and S trial. So he'll have a bingo that plays if he's able to create a second job or a second line for him. But again, far too little, far too late for Andy to get back into this one. Tough game. Andy made some really cool choices. Algicide is a play that I think he's one of the only people who would actually try to make that, and it paid off hugely for him. He probably gained 40 or 50 points of equity on that turn alone, and yet it just wasn't enough. Michael couldn't stop scoring, crushed that X spot. He hit Bedwins. He opened with Valonia, and just really never stopped scoring. Mankey as well. So great game by Michael. Nice try by Andy, but that's how Scrabble is at the top level. Somebody's got to win, and somebody's got to lose,
Yeah, yeah.
unless you tie.
Yeah, there has to be one total net win if a tie counts as half a win for both people.
Correct.
But that doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
I do think that in the rule book, if like both players commit egregious sportsmanship errors, or both players fail to show up, or neither player has equipment to play with, that both players take a forfeit loss. So technically, it is possible to happen. I've never heard of it, but it can happen. Andy's going to reach in and be very pleased to pull that last E out of the bag. He did find Star. He gets to set himself up nicely. Michael, I'm certain, has the tiles tracked correctly and sees his doom. He knows that Andy can bingo in two spots. And probably just going to try to score as much as he can in the interim, and we're going to see the end of this game. Fine, Michael, I'm trying to score at least 28 points this turn. I'd love to get that moral victory of scoring 500 at a Nationals game. I'm not seeing options right now because of the shape of this board and how unconducive it is to doing anything unless you have an S. But that's what I would like to try to do if I'm Michael.
Yeah, yeah. So Michael also played through this game very quickly. He still has 9 minutes left on his clock, just to see. Okay, well, and it's a pretty simple end game for him, right? He knows that Andy will be guaranteed a bingo, so he just needs to score as much as possible here. And, so it makes his decision easier when your opponent has the best stuff possible in two different spots that you can't block both for.
We'll check who we got in the next game for you here at the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship. I'm just going to kind of do some standing updates while we wait for this one to finish. I'm going to pop over to the Collins or CSW division. There's only one undefeated player, and that's Canadian Matthew Tunnicliffe, who's 4-0 with a spread of about plus 500, although that is a very tight and very talented field. So we'll keep you posted on CSW standings. Popping over to Division 2. First place is David Grimad right now with Knox Daniel, Joanne Cohen, and Marty Gold as the other three players undefeated in that division. I'll pop over as well into Division 3. It looks like the ratings haven't been updated for Division 3 yet, so I can't get you results there. And in Division 4, we have 4 undefeated players as well. Elaine Livers, Nathaniel Campos, Rana Afechi from Texas, and Brian Summers as well. With 2 other players at 3.5 and 1/2. So technically 6 undefeateds in Division 4 going into this round.
Yeah, it's all of these sorts of games early on. You can see these crazy spreads and stuff often when there's some. I know in the not younger divisions, the lower divisions, there can be just imbalances where there could be a player who's underrated by like 400 points and go off at the beginning. So it's always crazy to see some of those spreads towards the beginning. And Michael is finding his highest scoring play, so good on him.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Morris, but I think we've seen the player seated on the left of the stream win all 5 games today. Will, I believe, sat in the right chair for the first 3 rounds. And did he win a game? No. And then, John Karras sat on the left seat for round 4 and won that game. And now Michael Fagan sitting on the left for round 5. Round 6 is going to keep Andy Hong on board 1, and he'll face Jeff Fishbane. who's a fellow pharmacist, actually. I'm in pharmacy school right now. For those of you who don't know me, I'll be graduating next year, and he's, I think, the only other pharmacist I know of who's an expert level Scrabble player. So more games for you coming up soon. Andy is going to get the feel good bingo at the end and drop down Loiters and Star.
79. And you get 4 more from me.
And that's going to be it for this game. Nice job by Michael.
416 to 494.
Yes.
Nice setup. I don't know if I could have
So
lost
stay
that.
tuned. We're not going to drop the stream or anything. We're hoping to go straight through this afternoon and bring you more action. Again, they're going to do a little post-mortem here. I bet there's going to be a real quick pull out the phone and look up this word algicide. We'll see if we can get a read on the players' faces. And from there, we're going to get the next game, Andy versus Jeff Fishbane. I see in the chat, David Gramada is a pharmacist as well, so I just gave him a shout out for being undefeated. Jeff Fishbane was undefeated going into this round, so go Team Pharmacy. 2 undefeated players, and I'm undefeated at home too. I have not dropped a game yet in this tournament because I am not playing. So, cool. Interesting game for us here. Some tough decisions, but sometimes this is how Scrabble goes. When it rains, it pours. And Michael able to drop the Dwins and Oxo, I think, was the huge kind of 1-2 punch that did Andy in. Michael now filling out the result slip in Tournament Scrabble. The winner of each game fills out a piece of paper, and it gets signed by both parties and brought up to the tournament director, who then inputs it into the computer to continue pairing and keeping the standings up from then on.
Yeah, I mean, 48 points, you kind of have to challenge. And there's a chance that, it might be...
The commentators are going to step away for just a moment. I've got to get another little drink mixed up, some Sprite, and we'll have the next game for y'all in just a few minutes. We're going to cut to our... we're not going to kill the stream, so stay with us, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
I love your handwriting.
Thank
this
you.
is very clean. So, I hope you stay on table 1 because the annotators will love that. So.
He used to play with other Conrad.
Hello, everyone, and we are
Other
back
youngsters
for
of
round
that
6
age.
of the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship, live stream presented by Scrabble Go. I am Morris Greenberg, and I'm here with Matt Kim. Matt, how are you feeling about this next game?
I'm feeling excited, man. We've seen a lot of high-level Scrabble going on the board. I am curious to see, too, if the trend of the player sitting on the left side winning continues, because the player sitting on the left has won every game we've watched today. Round 6 is going to feature Andy Hong, who we just got to watch play in round 5. This time he'll be taking on Jeff Fishbane. I don't know how to say his last name, and I feel bad about that, but someone in the chat is about to help me out for sure. It looks like Jeff going first has drawn Oralist and Taylors and Rialtos, and that's going to be a pretty easy decision for him to make.
The best place to put this.
He'll have to decide which of the bingos he wants to play for sure. Oralist is interesting because I believe it takes a front hook of an M, although I am super rusty and I could be wrong. Maybe that's just oralism.
No, I think you're right. Oralist, Moralist, I think are both good. Nice
That
find
is,
there.
yes, that's correct. So Oralist does come down. That M could be pretty consequential, but overall, Andy can't be excited. He sits down at board 1, and his opponent's bingo on him with the top 2,000 word in each of the 2 games. But, you know, he's young. He can shake it off and stick with it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just setting up Quackle for a sec there. Missed a play, but we are back up. So Andy's holding EEFGNOU. It's not the easiest rack to deal with here. What plays are jumping out at you, Matt?
You know, honestly, right now, I'm not seeing much. I see the word fungo, and I'm like, yeah, that's a word, and that's really all I've got right now. Do you see anything?
Yeah, I was a similar. Sorry, I saw fungo and I saw gonef, Gonef. One of them. There are many spellings of that Yiddish word to mean a thief. But it looks like neither is really is going to score that many points if either is even available. He could play refuge, I guess, through the R in Oralist for 20, but that's not a lot of points, especially once you're down a bingo.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's really hard to, like, Andy was down most of the last game, and he's already immediately down 66 with not the best rack here, too. It's hard not to get upset and try to keep things super open. It's hard to shake it off and just try to make the right play every turn. Looks like Andy has set up Gonef now, and he may play that on top of Oralist.
Yeah, it's the kind of word like in those racks. I feel like if you start looking for clunky fives to get rid of a lot of things, then you realize, well, this clunky five isn't even that good here. So then you might start looking at 3-letter words and 4-letter words instead.
I think Fungo seems so crazy on top of Oralist, making GO and OR, sets an F in a triple line, but it does also guarantee that we're going to keep things open at least for quite a while in this game. I don't think Andy's that desperate this early. It's turn 1, so maybe he doesn't need to do that. He's got other options for FOUR, just down to the R and Oralist, holds EEGN, which could end up with the bingo. It's fairly prone, but could also end up being pretty abysmal with all those one-pointers if he doesn't hit that. Tofu is another option from the T and Oralist, but it looks like Andy's going to play a little bit longer, go with Gonef, kind of overlap some things, and we'll see how that leave of EU works out for him.
Yeah, EU. I mean, you normally don't want to leave two vowels, together as a two-tile leaf. Especially the U is probably the least valuable of all the vowels. But you know, there's definitely been times in this tournament where we've seen players pull all consonants when they need all consonants, or all vowels when they need all vowels. So maybe he gets that here.
So this is an interesting turn for Jeff now. jumping out to me right now. I don't know. I see he can play dud. And dud and nod, that's going to keep very, very bingo prone, but it's not going to score very much at all. So he'd like to try to get more points. You can see he set up din on his rack, DIN, making fad, LI, and IN. That's an option. If I'm Jeff, I've already got a lead. I'm now holding this S to pluralize Oralist whenever I want. Yeah, I would like to do a play like din, keep the board shut down, make Andy have to work hard to get his way back into this game. Do you see anything that stands out, Morris?
Well, so it looks like he now has maybe under or neuter set up through the ER from the E in Gonif and the R in Oralist. I kind of like that leave better. IDLS seems like a nice leave. You can pluralize Oralist to Oralists, and it just seems like there's a lot of synergy there that I kind of like the idea of getting rid of the D, the U, and the N. I guess there are some front hooks to under, so I might play neuter instead. But
I'd prefer to play utter, UDDER.
yeah, interesting. I mean, LINS is a nice leave in a vacuum. My issue with it is on this board, if you don't hit the bingo, I feel like you'll never score with LINS. Whereas LIDS, I guess the D sometimes gives you some leverage for scoring, at least as a backup. But yeah, you're right. Utter does score a bit more and keeps purely better bingo tiles.
I'm Camp Utter here. I'd play that for sure. ING we talked about earlier is kind of a trap, but holding IN with that floating G, I don't think it's the worst thing you can do. And yeah, you're right. If you miss the bingo, then you're not going to score. But I think on this board, you're also just not going to score, period. So he goes with what you've decided. He likes to keep that D for maybe some additional scoring opportunity. He goes with neuter here for 12.
Yeah, I think it's a solid idea, and if he draws an E especially here, he'll be in great shape to have a commanding lead. I mean, he already has more than a 50-point lead, but the second bingo can really make things smooth sailing for him.
He's got an A, and we'll see what goes with that. There's a B and an N. That'll be interesting.
So I guess was Bylander's a word? I forget these things.
Ooh.
That would have been blocked by him.
He blocked it himself, right?
Yeah.
Andy's unfortunately drawn into WUY, which just some really poor synergy together, and he's not going to be able to unclunk all of that at once.
And one other thing I missed, bladings is a word as well. So Jeff could get a bingo down next turn. He might be shuffling his tiles around that way. He sees bylands now, so I think he might have noticed the bingo he blocked for himself. But yeah, with Andy playing witty here, bladings could come down.
Yeah, blading, it's so hard determining in Scrabble which of those ing words do and don't take an S. There's the possibility of baldings, which definitely sounds like it could be gerundized like that. There's also the possibility of bladings, which typically my rule of thumb is if something is a sport, you can put the S on it. Any other time you can't. And blading to me does sound like a sport. But man, if I were Jeff right now, I'd be very unsure about both of these. I'd be very nervous on the stream. I think I would eventually try bladings, and I think I would get lucky, and it would be good in this situation.
Yeah, it's and I mean that scores so much more than everything else. Another thing is though, Jeff is up by 30 points here on a pretty low scoring board. It's not like by playing bladings and getting challenged off, Andy will have some 50-point play most of the time. Although with picking up the blank, he likely will have the bingo next turn. Bladings just seems like so much higher upside than most other things available to him right now.
Yeah, especially in a situation where there's not other plays that seem to stand out like this, you're a lot more willing to say, hey, forget it. Like, I am just going to take my shot and try this word. And hey, if it's good, sweet. And if it's not, well, it's worth the shot. It's definitely worth the gamble when the next highest scoring plays. I think the next highest scoring play might legitimately be blading for 26 to bladings for 78. So it looks like he's not going to go for it, which is reasonable with the lead. Like, don't take a shot on a word if you're not sure. Or maybe he just didn't notice that G is kind of sneaky over there. But he is going to forego the bingos here, and Andy is going to be able to bingo back. I see like Abrietta or Abrisha play through the B, so that's likely what he's going to do. Some kind of urbanite. There's many options for high probability bingos that I'm certain Andy knows. He's just got to
Yeah.
spend some time and find the one that shapes the board the way he wants to shape it.
Yeah, fruitage is another option through the G and Gonef. Definitely a lot of 8s available. I'm trying to see if there's any 7s to the W and I and Witty, and nothing's jumping out right away to me.
Infuriate is there as a 9. Thank you to Cy Adam in the chat.
Oh, nine.
Just because you have a 9 doesn't mean you should play the 9, but some of the other options, Abrisha, Abrietta, Fruitage, they all do give up significant counterplays. Urbanite as well, so maybe Infuriate is the correct bingo here. But is Andy going to take the time? Is Andy going to see it? And even if he does see it, is he going to play it? With a rack like this, I'm just trying to find a bingo that isn't terrible most of the time, and I'm just going to play. It's easy to get sucked into these racks and spend 7 minutes trying to figure out the optimal bingo when they're all going to score within 2 points of each other. And sometimes that time is better spent. Definitely sometimes that mental energy, too, is better spent. Why would I, strain my brain that hard for 7 minutes thinking as hard as I can when all my bingos score the same anyway?
Yeah, and one other thing to monitor here is Jeff has Isopodin through the I and Or list for a ton of points as an option next turn, but he has not noticed it. It looks like he has Pood set up. So it feels like these next 2 turns could be very pivotal. Jeff already forewent the hard to know for sure bladings. If he misses Isopodin and Andy does bingo here in a spot like Infuriate and doesn't open a ton for Jeff, that could be a huge momentum change in the game.
I've said this numerous times today, and you'll hear me say it more across today and tomorrow, but it is so hard to be on board 1-2. It is so much easier to whiff on a bingo that you would normally find just because that pressure, people are watching you. It gets in your head.
Yeah, so it feels like even though it's early in the game, we could be going at the end of the game. We could be saying these 2 turns coming up here were the 2 key decisive turns in a lot of ways for shaping the game. And he looks like he has Abrietta kind of aligned on his rack, so that might be what he's leaning towards right now. Well, he flipped to Abrisha, its anagram. But it looks like he's not going to look for the Infuriate type of bingo, at least not right now.
Players like Jeff are very challenging to size up and play. Jeff has played me some really great games at past nationals, but because he's been playing this game so long and he is such a veteran player, you have no idea what kind of words these people know and don't know. I would not be surprised for 1 second if Jeff does see Isopodin. I see in the chat people are saying it was in Word Freak. Word Freak, of course, the novel by Stefan Fatz is published around 2000 that got many of the players here originally into competitive Scrabble. But I think a lot of people pick up a lot of words just from having read that book. They pick up words just from playing in a bunch of tournaments and seeing people play those words against them, seeing them on the boards next to them. So would not be surprised at all if Jeff finds that word.
Yeah,
and if you haven't read Word Freak too, please, shameless plug. It's a great book. Definitely consider purchasing that. Shout out to Stefan. He's a great guy and he's a great writer.
Yeah, for those not knowing, Word Freak is kind of a book that got a lot of people into Scrabble. We sent surveys out to a bunch of the top players in the divisions and asked, how do you get into competitive Scrabble? And a lot of the answers were, I read Word Freak, or my best friend read Word Freak and then convinced me to start playing Scrabble too, sort of thing. So it's really a book that shaped what competitive plays today. It's a book that follows, at the time, 4 of the best Scrabble players in the world, and all 4 of them are still excellent players. I mean, Joel Sherman won nationals a few years ago, and Joe Edley, who we already talked about earlier in this broadcast, has won 3 nationals as well. And Marlon and Matt also are still really good players and could probably beat me if I played them, they are likely the favorites. So, yeah, it's a great book. Definitely, if you want to learn about what the competitive scene looks like, read that book.
Definitely consider reading that book. Yeah, I'm gonna shamelessly plug it. Hope I don't get in trouble for doing this. But yeah, Word Freak. Goodbye. Good way to understand a little bit more about competitive Scrabble, and several of the major characters in that book are even here with us today. Marlon Hill, I know, has made appearances in the chat. Joel Sherman has been around in the chat. So if y'all are still here, hello, hello. Jeff has lined up Isopoden, so Andy is about to get crushed. He's spending a very large amount of time, as I talked about. We're going to spend 7 minutes on this turn and play one of the 3 bingos we saw instantly. And then we're going to get bingoed back on for even more than we scored. Ironically, for Andy, he actually wants to play the most aggressive bingo right now that sets up the most spot, only because we know that Jeff is about to bingo back away from that spot.
Yeah, ironically, also, it seems like the more time Andy took, it gave Jeff the time to will the power to see Isopodin. He has Sopodin set up on his rack, so great find by Jeff. As Matt has said a bunch of times, it's so hard to find some of those more obscure-looking 7 or 8-letter words on stream, and so it looks like we'll get back-to-back bingos here. And maybe he's looking at Urbanite now? Is that possible?
Urbanite, yeah, he's got that lined up now. Again, it's just, I don't think it's worth taking this amount of time. You never know which games are going to have the tight end game. Curiously, Urbanite puts the blank on the triple letter, so this is the lowest scoring of the options through the B, and yet that's what he's elected. I don't know if he isn't confident in Abrisha or Abrietta, or if he's doing this for strategic purposes. Maybe he's trying to keep that E in such a way that it's hard to fully obstruct. Curious decision for sure. But that's what Andy likes to do, and we'll see if Jeff now pulls the trigger on Isopoden.
Yeah, I think it's one of those words, once you see it, I feel like once you see it live over the board, you're pretty sure it's a word. It's not like bladings where you're like, is that valid? Is that invalid? No, if you've studied Isopodin or seen it once before, you know you aren't just making that up out of thin air, and he elects to put it down pretty quickly.
Yeah, Isopoden's going to come down. That's a cool rec, ADINOPS, because it has an Isopoden with an O. If you double up on the A, you have Diapason as well. There's some really cool words in that 7-letter stem with an additional letter. So there we go. Andy incredibly plays Urbanite for very few points compared to his other options to set up the Coddy that he just drew. So he's going to crush that spot with QADI for over 50 points. Andy might be on the next level. We've already seen Sid kind of go against conventional judgment and accidentally or deliberately block a bunch of bingos from Will earlier today, and now we've watched Andy sacrifice a few points to psychically draw Coddy and play it on top for a huge score. So interesting stuff we're seeing on board 1 today.
Yeah, and once the dust settles after Coddy, it will basically be a tie game. I mean, it won't be quite, it will be within 10 points, though. So, yeah, it's Scrabble can be... We've now seen 3 bingos, a 60-point Q play. It can be a whole lot of scoring at the most random times.
So I guess I need to eat my hat now, because spending 7 minutes on that turn maybe was the right thing for Andy to do, if you can guarantee that 50-point follow-up.
Yeah, it's risky. That's the kind of play that if we had post-game interviews, it would be really interesting to hear what Andy's decision-making process there was. Because, yeah, there's a lot of nuance in those sorts of positions of thinking about, given the tiles left in the bag, what sorts of plays do you want to allow up there, and how likely is it that Jeff could hit those plays versus you with 7 random tiles after playing the bingo.
Definitely an interesting sequence for sure. We're back on Jeff's turns now, and he's got a U and a Y, which is not super excited to see together, but he's going to have some options yet this turn.
Yeah, and David Firstman in the chat points out Guernsey as an option.
I think Jonathan Lynn got there first, but yeah,
Oh,
Guernsey, Guernsey. He's almost got that set up on his rack, but man, I would not have seen that. I can say that with sincere confidence, especially not on board one. So,
yeah.
I mean, we've already seen once a few people didn't have faith in Jeff, and I said right away, I bet he finds it. So we'll see if Jeff is able to find this one too. But that is a tough one. That's a really tough one.
Yeah, that's the kind of word where I if I miss it once, I'll remember that word forever from here on out. I feel like. So if I had missed Guernsey before, I'll see it every other time since then. But the first time, it's painful when you're reviewing the game after and realize you missed that word.
That's I think every Scrabble player has had that lesson learned about 1,000 times. You lose a game, you go back and look over it or check your racks, you realize you missed a bingo or something, and then that word is forever etched in your memory. But to me, I literally can place myself back in the hotel ballroom that I was at when I missed that word and put myself back over that board. I get that association forever. So now I'll remember Guernsey from this here. We'll see if Jeff gets to learn that lesson today or if he's able to find the bingo. But man, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're like living vicariously through Jeff, but I feel like vicariously isn't the right word. There needs to be like a special Scrabble word to describe that state of emotion.
Right. I know people have had that for me. I've got a YouTube series online and people have watched that and they'll talk to me about games I lost 6 years ago. And I'm like, huh, okay, yeah, wow, interesting. Yeah, I remember that game too.
Yeah. So if you don't see Guernsey though, I guess you just play YE off of the DE at the top center part of the board.
That's a hard thing to do because this board is not like particularly conducive to playing sevens. There's a lot of floaters for eights right now, but especially if you play YE right there, you've eliminated the last good line to play sevens, and you're fishing for sevens. So it's got to be a play that you don't want to make, but you know it's going to sim well according to Quackle, and you know the reports are going to say, hey, you should have done that.
Yeah, one crazy word that I had seen before but forgot about is Senryu, Senryu, and that could go immediately underneath Kadi and Urbanite to make QIS 8 and Den. That would be a great find as well.
That's disgusting. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of the first few plays. I mean, they were kind of more natural, right? A bingo, a foreless, isopodin. If you see that, those are once you see the word, it's an easy decision to make. This turn for Jeff, he elects for I. There are a lot of plays that are similarly good, and so that's often when I spend a lot of time, just because it feels like if I can get that 2% advantage of making the best play versus like the third best play, it's worth it.
All right, Andy's going to drop a little chemistry term and play Molol. And he's playing very fast. He's getting some of that time back from when he did spend a long time on the AEI RTU blank rack. If I were Jeff, I would have definitely just played YE over dropping the E. I get the idea to try to score 4 more points, and you don't want to get caught up fishing for a bingo on a board like this. But RNSU versus ERNSU, there's a big difference. Now, Jeff does draw into Ourangs, but it is not going to play, and I'm not seeing anything immediately in terms of bingo options for him.
Well, there is one starting with the N in isopodin. We'll see.
Oh my goodness, yeah, chat found it right away. Non-sugar. There's another chemistry word if we want to stick with the theme. We got a pharmacist, and I don't know what Andy studies, but yeah, you got some smart guys across the board in any case. So we'll see if we can go from molal to non-sugar. We've already got an isopod word as well. We're really leaning into the science here.
Yeah, I think Andy is a medical student, an MD student. So.
Oh wow, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so non-sugar is quite appropriate for the pharmacist versus the future doctor then.
Yeah. So it's Yeah, it's a tough one to see though. N is actually, I think, after V, the second, maybe, or no, I guess not only V, like V, Q, and X. There are very few letters where uh, it's one of the shortest sections of the dictionary that starts with N. So N is often a great letter to slot where Jeff slotted it, just because there aren't that many words that start with N and go 7 spots to the right, but he does happen to have one of those, so hopefully he looks for it.
My expression is nothing starts with N. I never worry about a floating N if you can start with it. But the irony of that statement, of course, is that nothing actually starts with an N.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, so
Our Collins folks are probably just clamoring for L-Rings to come down already, but such is the life in TWL. We're going to drop a nug there instead for 15 points. No, we're going to pull that back up. Okay.
we're
Jeff
not
is
dropping
definitely
a
thinking
nug.
about this turn.
Yeah, if you don't see non-sugar there, I mean, it's once again a bunch of similarly okay plays, and it's sometimes tough to discern which of those is the right thing. So he finds a nice play of granola, very stylish.
Very stylish, but that U, I think, is going to cause a lot of trouble for him down the road. I would have really preferred to unload that if possible. And Andy's going to destroy that spot. Ouch. View. That clears his rack out a bunch and scores just a boatload as well. And we'll see if Jeff regrets holding on to that U in just a minute. I would have opted for Nug over Granola there. Granola's the fun, flashy one to drop on the stream for sure, but you got to try to get rid of those U's as well.
Yeah, or arugula if you're going to do
Yeah,
one of those
arugula,
ballet
the
flips.
better version.
But yeah, so we'll see what Jeff draws. Andy has now taken a 30-point lead with that 56-point play. But Jeff is drawing some decent letters. Okay, so he draws the Z. He might be able to score with that a bit.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing a lot of conducive scoring options for the Z. The ADZ spot is there, but he's not able to do anything else with it.
Yeah, so Azure is an option off of the RE in Granola and View. There, yeah, and I guess SAR also is available off of TZAR off of the E in I to make it X.
What a tough game.
Yeah,
I'll echo what we got in chat. Watching this game is a whole lot easier than playing it. Watching this game, having your anagrammer up, having Quackle up, having a stream of people finding words with you, it is hard to play this game and to play it at a top level consistently, turn in and turn out.
Yeah, and I think one part of that is there are so many E's left in the game. Often, like a lot of the 7 and 8 letter words players study have an E in it. It's the most probable letter. And we've seen a lot of racks since the I turn of no E's, and that makes it, I feel like, a whole lot tougher to find these eclectic looking words.
So over under then on 3.5 E's on somebody's end game rack.
I don't know, man. There are 35 unseen, and from Jeff's perspective, and 7 E's. Now we know Andy doesn't have any of them, so that means of the 20 in the bag, a fourth of them are E's.
We like it. The chaos. Lean in.
Yeah, I mean it will be interesting too because the left side of the board is pretty exhausted for bingos at this point. So we'll see how the right side develops these next few turns. It doesn't look conducive to bingos right now, but if a player makes the right kind of play, it could just allow for bingos in ways we didn't anticipate.
Yeah, and I am curious to see, are we going to see this board open back up or not? Jeff could consider playing TZAR underneath I. making that score just a decent amount of points. It set up a spot for his S. Of course, Andy's also sitting on an S. But yeah, all of a sudden it's become pretty tough to score points on this board without bingoing. And Jeff is not particularly close to a bingo right now.
Yeah. So it looks like he's trying to get rid of one of the R's and a U, which are probably the two weakest tiles in this set of letters. The others have some pretty nice synergy together. Is he just considering rut and ire, maybe? Is that what he's thinking about?
I think so. He's already looked at that spot once. Oh, he's going to go with yurt.
Setting up yurta or yurts.
7.
So that definitely opens up the right side of the board and is conducive to some bingos for him specifically. We'll see if Andy decides to block that area. He has the 2 extensions for yurt as well. That is an A and an S.
I'm not seeing any outstanding options for Andy that jump out right now. You've got to be thinking, why is Jeff playing yurt for 7? How close is he to a bingo? And to me, if I'm Andy, that screams Jeff has a blank. Now, the irony, of course, is that Jeff doesn't have a blank, but I'm on full alert right now that my opponent has just thrown this board open for 7 points, playing off some 1-pointers. That sets off a lot of flags in my head. Andy seems unfazed and decides he's also going to be playing for a bingo here. He's going to drop KI for 21 points, holding a pretty solid lead, especially if he's able to pick up some of those E's. And there's one. Here's Andy's patented move. We've seen it a bunch of times. Sit there and wait and try to will that second tile into what he wants it to be. And he does, in fact, pull vibrates, but I don't know that we're going to see that spot stay open with Yurta and Yurt's possibilities.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I was hoping he was going to play Britska last turn just because I love that word, but KI is probably a bit better. Yeah, if you're Jeff here now, I don't know if you use that Yurt or Yurta spot. I mean, you're also down now by 44 points. You kind of need to keep that area open, I think.
Yeah, he's got like a rose through that RARROZ. He really wants to sit on top of this Z. He's not playing it. I think he wants to try to cash it for some points, but that is going to allow Andy to get down vibrates. So maybe there was a method to his madness.
We missed Sforzato also. SFORZATO.
Oh my goodness.
Which Jeff did as well there. So it looks like that will be a key swing here. But again, tough to find bingo. We missed it ourselves.
Wow. And so Andy comes down with vibrates, and that's going to be almost impossible for Jeff to come back. There's almost no place to bingo now, unless you bingo from the N in isopotin. But as we discussed, nothing starts with N except non-sugar.
And nothing.
And Jeff has drawn Sazerac, which shout out to the directors, Lila Crotty, Kate Fukawa-Connolly, the directors of the New Orleans tournament, for putting together just the marquee Scrabble event of the year. Every year there's a tournament in January in New Orleans. It is an absolute blast. And yes, many Sazeracs are consumed there as well. If anybody wants to channel their inner Mariah Smith and DoorDash some Sazerac to my front door, I wouldn't have any qualms about that either after the shandies.
I would actually partake in that too. But again, I'm not saying my address on screen. Sorry, folks.
I think Will might be able to go for one after dropping his first 3 games on stream as well. But Andy just made this game very interesting. That's a poor choice by Andy, drawing 7 consonants when he probably should have considered drawing a vowel. We've talked about how many E's were unseen, and Andy decided, you know what, Jeff, you can have all of them. I'm going to draw this. So maybe not the best move by Andy. We'll see what he's got planned, but I would have drawn some vowels if I had a choice in it.
Yeah, so there are 13 unseen to Jeff, and there are only 7 vowels from Jeff's perspective remaining. 5 of them are E's, an I, and a U. So, yeah, Andy drew into a lot of the dreck in the bag, but Jeff, if he's trying to fish off his Z, if he plays something like Rez, he might he might not get the tiles he wants.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Jeff wants to do. He's clearly very stuck to that Z. Like he's been holding on to it when he could be playing it off because he wants to score points with it. I'm just not seeing the spots on this board where he's going to be able to do that. And now he's passing up on bingos this turn because he's been holding it for so long. This is a rack you expect to bingo out of when it's this bingo prone, but at least finally he is able to cash the Z. He'll play res. I bet he's going to draw an E. I think mathematically it's nearly impossible for him not to at this point. And he scores well enough that a bingo will still get him back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, there is that end spot still, which is kind of hard to block from Andy's perspective at this point.
Right.
If he can, so he can likely next turn set up a spot on a different part of the board, and he'll have 2 bingo spots at the end of the game, which is a decent shot to win.
This is going to be tough. I'm sure Andy is looking at his tracking sheet right now, trying to figure out, hey, are there enough letters where I can exchange? So he's reaching in the bag right now to have that discussion. He nodded, so it seems like that is the case. We're waiting on our Quackle to get updated so I can tell y'all what exactly is unseen. 18 unseen, 11 in the bag. So if Andy is going to exchange, this is his last possible time to do it.
And I love exchanging 7 just because, as Matt said, there was 11 in the bag. So he gets to know a lot more information about the contents of the bag after this turn than Jeff will. And he can inform his future decision making based on that. If you only exchange a few of those tiles, then you still won't know most of the bag. But he now knows 7 of the 11 tiles in the bag.
And that's crazy because, if Jeff were to bingo there, Jeff would probably just draw all of those consonants and lose. So Jeff, in a way, is fortunate that he doesn't have a bingo right now because that gives Andy a chance to reach back in and grab some of that garbage one more time, which is what Jeff wants to see. Andy does, in fact, draw 4 E's on his endgame rack, so the over does hit on 3.5. Props to you playing along and gambling at home. Andy has to decide now too, do I want to try to play off this X? Because it can get really scary if my opponent bingos late and catches me with this X. Or do I want to play something like METE and keep that X for scoring possibilities? But it's pretty easy to drop EX in the very top left corner of this board, making XU. You can drop METE next to foo near the top as well, vertically. He's got some options, but he also definitely wants to think about the I that Jeff just strung out there. Can he survive if Jeff is able to find a bingo through it? He's got to be scared. There's a blank unseen. Jeff played Yurt and RAI and REZ, so Jeff is implying, like, I am extremely close to a bingo. And Andy just doesn't quite have the lead, I think, to get there.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's still a lot unseen in the bag. I guess is there any play that he can make that's a bit more intentional with closing? Well, it looks like he just is going to play meaty or keeping the X, which I think is a fine idea. EX is going to be unblocked a lot of the time.
I'd be more inclined, I think, to play meat down underneath Yurt, MEET, through the E and vibrates, just because it does obstruct the I a little bit. But Jeff is not going to bingo again. He's picked up the J, which just gets right in his way. And Jeff does need to be very careful after a change 7. There must be garbage in the bag, and you have to try to dodge some of that. RAS as a leave with a blank is about the best thing you can do, knowing you're going to draw some of that garbage, like hoping it won't kill you. And he also does set up his X.
Correct.
So this is actually a more interesting game than I thought it was going to be, just because Jeff is sitting on such good letters. Andy is not really able to do much in terms of blocking, but I think it's going to come down to Andy's going to address the I, and Jeff is going to have to try to hit a bingo from the N, or Andy decides, forget it, I'm going to score so many points right now that I can live a bingo through the I. Looks like they've paused the clock to address a scoring or try to reconcile that. They must have different scores for one another, which may have also driven some of the plays we've seen.
Okay, you can hit my clock with my account.
Yeah, scoring errors are always tough. Like if someone's off by 10 points by just when they're manually adding up scores and accidentally do a 10 columns error, that could really change your thought process, being up 30 points versus 20 points or something like that.
And Jeff has had a number of pretty tricky turns this game, turns where there may or may not actually be a bingo. Jeff is starting to run low on time, though, and if this game does come down to an end game, I think that's going to be a factor. He's at about 3 minutes already. He's going to have to think with that blank, go through the whole alphabet trying to find letters it could be. This is going to be tough for Jeff at this point. I don't know what Andy's going to do, though. Does he score points in the top right or top left? Does he drop EX for 36? Does he try to block the line? I don't know what his plan is.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with blocking the line is it's going to score so much fewer points than anything else. And if he still has some, if Jeff has some miracle bingo through the end, uh, you might have just lost the game because you sacrificed so many points to try to block a lane.
There are, 2 tiles in the bag at this point? Is that
And
correct?
it's CC.
Is CC in the bag? So unseen to Andy is ACCGHRST blank. ACCGHRST blank unseen. So Andy has to be somewhat confident that Jeff isn't going to bingo, and even if Jeff is going to bingo, through that eye at this point, it's not going to be enough to outrun D6. It looks like Andy played
Yeah.
already. He's hit the clock, and Jeff now has to try to find, I guess, trashing is what he would do, but that's going to be too little, too late, I think. Someone do this math for me.
Yeah, I think it will be a bit too little. Even though that empties the bag, it will be. It won't be quite enough. He'll lose, I think, within 10 points. And
Okay.
he's literally looking at the placement that it does fit. But yeah, Andy, I think, made a really nice option. D6 was basically his highest scoring option, and obstructed that lane, right? It blocked any potential bingos that start with the I down to the triple, which are the highest scoring ones. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, his move there.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jeff go overtime here, just because he knows he's going to have to find something crazy that like back hooks Jehu or something in order to win. I'm sure he's doing the math right now, double checking his tracking, and realizing that he's going to narrowly lose this game if he does play trashing. So he's going to see if there's something else, and he might spend a little extra time trying to get there. He might be looking through nines, through that OP, through the LO, just any way to make this bingo score a little bit more.
No, it looks like he's just going to play trashing. I think he has thrown in the towel, which, I mean, to be fair, this is the best play. So playing trashing is the correct play.
Do you think he plays Sharting or something instead? I don't think so. But that's an option. It would win the game if it were good. But Jeff, I think, is not even gonna risk it. He's just gonna grab the points that he can before that line gets blocked, and he will narrowly lose this game. Wow, what a tough one! What a tough one for Jeff. There's some tough bingos that he oversaw. Guernsey, I would have missed that absolutely as well. And what a great fight by Andy, kind of coming back and getting into this game and squeaking it out.
Yeah. So final score 4-14 to 4-11. A lot of crazy turns, a lot of words that were played and weren't played that were just incredible words. And so yeah, that's sometimes Scrabble. If you can see things like Sforzato, Guernsey, non-sugar, you're winning, and if you don't, then you just don't.
It looks like they're doing a recount on this game, so we might be here a couple more minutes as Jeff slowly but surely comes to accept that he didn't quite have it. He doesn't quite have enough points. Round 7 on board 1 is going to show the return of Michael Fagan, playing against fellow Texan Ori Swift. So that'll be a fun one to watch as well. We don't know when that one's going to get started for you just yet, but we don't have any plans to end the stream or anything. We may take a quick break, but stay tuned, stay posted, and we'll get you the last game of day 1 of the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship.
I should just play as it turns out.
If you had Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you get better, and I hope you feel better.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the
You take care.
2022 Scrabble
playing?
Players
Are you playing tomorrow?
Championship. We were talking about Word Freak earlier,
glad
and we
you came.
see
You're
one
the
of
ambassador of
the
the
Word
state of
Freak
Maryland.
legends, Marlon Hill,
Well, I think so. You're one
at
of
the
the
playing
big
studio
guys.
right now, right
So-
behind Joey Kraftic. We are going to be
Okay.
seeing Andy Hong for a third time in a row against Joey
Is all
Kraftic.
shaken up, Joey?
I'm Morris Greenberg, and I'm here with Matt Kanek.
Here, Cam.
Yeah, we have Word Freak legend Marlon Hill facing up against a player who was barely alive and a player who probably wasn't alive when Word Freak was published. So the young blood is truly the future of Scrabble. Andy versus Joey. This is going to be an interesting game for sure.
Is table one usually yellow tiles, or?
Yeah, and you can see by their names, they are both 5 and 1 right now, so they are towards the top of the leaderboard. We saw Andy's one loss earlier this afternoon, but he recovered nicely in a close game against Jeff Fishbein last round. And he has not drawn the best tiles, though, to start. Matt, what do you look to do in this sort of situation if you're Andy?
Sorry, repeat that one more time, Morris. I apologize.
No, it's all good. I was just asking what would you look to do in this sort of situation? Would you try to play short like AI like Andy has set up here? Would you exchange AI for that matter? Would you play something that burns a bunch of letters like Aria or Idea? What do you look to do on this sort of turn?
So in general, if you're given the option between playing 2 vowels on the first turn for 4 points or exchanging the same 2 vowels, it's a better idea to exchange. Every single letter you put out on the first turn increases the odds that your opponent is going to be able to play an 8-letter bingo out of a rack that wouldn't otherwise bingo. So just by playing AI, you increase the odds that Joey's going to bingo by about 3 or 4%. So I would prefer to just throw him back. I'd exchange 2 here. Andy is looking at some crazy plays like Redia. There's no reason to play a word that long in this scenario. I think trade 2 is very much the standard play that most experts would agree on. You could make an argument to trade 3 instead, maybe throw back both of the I's and an A. Obviously, this is all moot at this point because Joey's nowhere close to a bingo, and we know that. But that's what's going through Andy's head right now, I bet. And I think change 2 is the thing he should do.
Yeah, if he's going to play longer, I like Radii as an option, not using the E at all. But he's going to play Aria, which is another idea similar to Radii. The placement is interesting as well.
Yeah, that's a play that Andy made. I don't know that I agree with that at all. I think the chat has also exploded right now at that play, but Andy would have been crushed had he played that because Joey would have thrown down Vogue, and there's very little chance Andy would have been able to bingo back after Vogue. So it is a play that's going to work out for him here, although I don't think very many players in this division would have elected to do that over the exchange 2.
Yeah, it's interesting. Arya does take a lot of front hooks, or maybe only 2, M and V at a minimum, and Joey's going to capitalize on the V hook to play Gavit and Varia, which looks pretty solid from my first glance.
Yeah, no, that seems like a good play as well. I think I would have considered also just playing Vogue as opposed to playing longer with something like Gavit. Vogue and Varia seems like a very good play to me. But Joey, I'm sure, has his reasons for electing to play a little bit longer here. Joey recently also went to Word Cup and was right there in contention to win the thing the whole time. He ended up losing his last game to drop into 3rd place. But Joey is a very solid player, and I'm sure he has some kind of rationale that we may or may not get to hear from him after this game. It did end up working out for him in some capacity here because he did pick up a blank by playing the 2 additional tiles. So there's an argument in competitive Scrabble that you maybe try to turn over tiles or play more just so you have more access to the good tiles in the bag. People don't really ascribe to it anymore aside from in special circumstances, but Joey did turn over 2 more tiles and he did draw a blank because of it. Or maybe he would have drawn that blank anyway, you don't know. But interesting move by Joey after a very interesting move by Andy, and this is where we are now, 8-19 on board 1 of the Scrabble Players Championship.
Yeah. So Joey could get approved next turn, for instance, through the R in Varia, and I'm looking at Andy's place right now. So it looks like he has Jihad set up through the A in Varia for a good amount of points. That seems like a pretty natural play, which will allow for approved to come down, though, still.
Yeah, if he's got Jihad, he's also got Haji in the same spot. It's Anagram, but that would allow Joey to come back with opposed for even more points. So we'll see. But Joey's looking like he's in good shape right now with that first blank, that pivotal blank.
Yeah, and so Jihad is played. That does have the back hooks of an I and an S, but those will be obstructed a bit after approved.
Joey does have approved. Are there any other bingos that play out of this rack? I'm not seeing anything that jumps out to me. Pre-adopt, I think, is there too.
Oh, well,
So-
opposed, like you said, actually, with Gavit's, which Joey has set
Oh,
up as
yes,
well.
yes.
I
Opposed is
missed
going to be
that
the
in my
move
first
here.
thing, yeah. So yeah, that will be 81 points, and will give Joey a nice 40 to 81 point lead. It looks like he's ready to play it right now. I'm assuming he's going to play it below Gavit and not for a few less points off of the D and Jihad.
Yeah, of course.
81.
So opposed is going to come down for Joey. His interesting play of Gavit works out perfectly for him, and he's up 100 to 40 in this game already, as Andy is sitting on a pretty drecky rack. To me, what jumps out is Ivy and Jihadi. Jihadi is such a fun word to come down. Jihad, because it takes an I, and then that takes an S, and then that takes like an M or a T behind it, jihadist or jihadism. So I see in chat we're rooting for the whole chain to come down.
Yeah.
IV would allow the S to come down, but because of the placement of that V, that's as far as we could see that word get built. Joey's already pulled the second blank this game. Joey messages me at every tournament he plays in routinely after most rounds and let me know how many blanks he draws. So it's good to know. I don't have to get a message from Joey after this game. I know he's pulled both of the blanks in this one.
Yeah, so it seems like Andy might be opting for Vim for a few more points instead of Ivy. He could also go with Vibe or Five, which he now has 5 set up. I assume all of those are going to go underneath Jihadi. That seems like the natural spot. And yeah, as Matt said, if you see the hook, your eye keeps wandering towards it for the rest of the game. And I'm guessing Andy is lasering in on that right now.
If I'm Andy here, I am thinking about that M. If I play Jihadi's comes down a lot, and then I wonder how important the M hook might be afterwards. I don't think it's hugely consequential, but I would have opted in any case to play something smaller there, like a Vim, over something like 5, which has a bunch of hooks and throws the board open. Floating that E is just so dangerous, and I think we're about to see exactly why.
Yeah, I mean, Joey does have pretty good word knowledge, so...
There's not a chance Joey misses Calicles. It's coming down 100%.
Yeah, and so that's a nice find by Joey for 63 points, extending his lead even further. I'm guessing Andy might be holding here. We saw him already challenge once when he saw, if a play is good, I'm losing either way, so might as well challenge the 10% chance a play is bad. But oh no,
Joey loves to study. Joey studies the bingos extensively. I'd be shocked if we see Joey miss any bingo on any rack. Though I think bingos will slow down now that Joey has already drawn both of the blanks in this game.
Yeah.
And Joey also is sitting on Zeals right now through the A and opposed. I think what we're about to see is just a landslide victory. That's how Scrabble is sometimes, but you never know.
Well, Wimpy could come down for Andy here, which would block Seals, and that scores 38. So, don't count Andy out yet. It's not great for him, but if he plays Wimpy, I think that definitely will slow the game down a bit for Joey.
I mean, Joey's still sitting on just dropping the Q for 31 points. That might be better than Zeals anyway. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is better than Zeals. So even if it does go away, Joey's fine as long as he can unload that Q and sit on additional power tiles. He's got another S, he's got a Z. So Joey's going to be scoring a lot, almost like despite what Andy does.
Yeah, it's it's looking great for Joey, but we've seen comebacks today that have been at least this size, and I'm not counting Andy out yet, I guess.
Yeah, Wimpy has to be the play here, but maybe Andy is thinking he's already down almost 100 points. He's been double blanked. Do you think about opening a triple already at this point in the game? I think that's too extreme. But Wimpy versus some other options might give you a chance to do that, playing a 4-letter word underneath the post. He likes to go with Wimpy, and I think that's right. There's nothing wrong with that play. He's going to get queued for 31 in like 1 second. I can't believe Joey hasn't already played it.
Yeah,
But
Joey's a very fast player in general. I remember
there it
playing
is.
him
There
once,
it
and
is.
yeah. So Joey's up 194 to 113 now. Andy, let's see what his last tile is here. So he he it seems like he's building his way towards bingos. Those aren't the clunkiest letters like last turn. Like if he plays blown, for instance, this turn through the W and Wimpy, that will score 30 and will keep an okay lead.
Yeah, blown is a good option. It's going to leave that B out there, and that B's probably going to be left alone for a while and give Andy that shot to bingo down for 90. He could also consider just playing blow or something similar to that. You definitely want to undouble your ends, but blow is going to keep this board so much more open and aggressive for him to try to make a comeback. I don't think that's what he wants to do. I think blown is fine. He's not down so much that he has to get that aggressive at this juncture.
Yeah, I agree with the decision too. And like, who knows if he draws the X, for instance, like X sign could come down for off the opposed, and all of a sudden he's just back in the game. So there's a lot of non bingos even that he could hit, keeping an end there. But Joey elects for a pretty strong play there. Cuz for 42.
Aside from Gavitt, Joey's had at least one power tile on every play this game, and Andy has to be feeling that right now. It's just so hard to keep up when your opponent is just raining points like Joey is right now.
Yeah, so maybe he plays Ruin and Fiver. That's Rouen, is an option potentially.
I like that a lot. That's going to get this board open in that bottom quadrant that he needs to reach, and it scores enough that keeps him in this game. That is a superb play.
Yes, that's what's jumping out to me at least right away. Otherwise, if he wanted to go the route of keeping as good of tiles as possible, we already seen OUZO in an earlier game when Bradley Whitmarsh beat Will Anderson in the end game with that word. He could do that here, jump OUO through the Z.
Joey has picked up 2 S's as well. I'm trying to see if he has any bingos out of that rack. I'm not seeing anything that actually fits on this board. We've got options like oil seeds, delouses. Ruin, I don't think, is going to give him anything either. He's already got too many E's to play through an additional E. But Ruin, I believe, does take that back S, and Joey's sitting on 2 of them. So that's a play Joey doesn't mind seeing come down either.
Yeah, it's a great find by Andy, and I mean he's doing everything right. It's always tough when your opponent bingos twice early in the game, drops some big points with the power tiles, but you know he's given himself a fighting chance. We'll see what he draws.
I bet Joey comes down with something like dozes and fivers, or maybe he just plays dose and ruins. I'm not sure exactly what he's got in mind, but he's going to score a lot of points and keep very well this turn. I'd expect him to bingo about 50% next turn with what he's got.
Yeah, and he looked up at the ceiling for a sec. I wonder if he's going through a bunch of words in his head, considering which of like ES or OS to dump, and trying to figure out which one allows for more 7s and 8s next turn.
He's got to be upset that lessened doesn't quite fit LESSONED through that N. But, you know, there's only so much upset you're even allowed to be when you've played a power tile on at least every turn this game.
24.
Joey, Joey plays Doles right there. That is a word. That's a play.
I think we know Matt's tell right now when he doesn't like a play. He says that's a word.
That's a valid play that you can make. Joey is a very good player, and I'm sure he has reasons for playing that, but that is incredibly weird, and I think the chat will back me up on that. That is very interesting. But Joey's going to pick up Hex. Now he's got an X on top of like literally every power tile he's drawn already this game, and he's going to be able to get away with that play and continue scoring a bunch of points. So he's got Hex. He's got the spot underneath Blown to drop the X as well. Joey's just going to continue scoring as Andy tries to fight through some muck. Okase, is there like Okase or something like that, right? Ukase, I think, is the word.
You're saying how are you spelling it?
Like there's a 5 with the K. I think it's Ukase or something, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So Andy doesn't quite have that underneath Ruin. It'd be great to drop that K on the double letter and play across that way. But Ukase, thank you for the reinforcement chat. Ukase is the one. So Andy's not gonna be able to do that. No U. And I'm not sure what he is going to do. Though it is nice for Andy that he did draw an S. That's got to be good. Also, if you are Andy, you have to determine after Doles, Joey is obviously sitting on a second S. There's no reason to make that play without it. So if you're Andy, you're thinking, that ruin spot is there and I can hook an S and bingo, but I know Joey has one too. So tough situation for Andy.
Yeah, it looks like he's holding the letters O-A-K. I just assumed that would go parallel to the E and the N in Ruin, making O-E and A-N as well. But it looked like he was moving it to a different part of the board before, so I'm wondering where he's thinking of putting those tiles. Maybe Cola off the L in Blown?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where exactly he wants to play those tiles right now. It is a little bit intimidating to just choose the tiles you want to play and try to play them somewhere, but at the same time, sometimes some leaves are so much better than others that you have to try to make that happen. Oh man, what is Andy gonna do here? This is rough. This is not the best situation for him.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, is Oka called for off the C in Calicles? Just OCA, keeping a pretty synergistic AEIKS, and it opens another part of the board. I mean, he's not going to be scoring a ton anyways, but okay, he opts for Oak.
I think that's reasonable. If Joey hadn't just played Doles, I would hate this play. I would say that S is your best way back in the game. But because Joey was so transparent about showing that he's sitting on an S right now, Andy's probably got to play defense even though he's down, which is a wild prospect, but it's what has to happen. And Andy does end up blocking a Hex on the triple word, so that's going to work out very nice for him. This is why I think a play like Doles is so weird, though. Like, you don't want to give your opponent that information, right? You don't want to let your opponent block your options, and that's exactly what Doles was. I have no idea why Joey made that play. That is very questionable from a player who is so good like Joey. And it came so fast on top of that. But that's what happened. And Joey is very close to a bingo again after fishing that X. And Andy has picked up additional vowels into his AEIS leave.
Yeah, it's so now maybe like playing ECU, which he has the E and the U first. So I'm wondering if he's considering that off of the C and Calicles. Maybe is his plan. Obviously, you don't love keeping 4 vowels and only 1 consonant, but at least that starts to open another part of the board, and you can maybe hit something through the B, for instance, if you draw the right consonants.
Yeah, this is tough. Acai is also there through the C in Calicles if you want to play off one more vowel. But man, if you're Andy, like I already questioned his decision last game. He decided to draw 7 consonants in a close game. Now he keeps drawing vowels, and if I were Andy, I would try to draw some consonants pretty soon. But maybe he's got a reason for doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and I see in the Twitch chat people say resign. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to resign during tournament games. It's not like chess.
So you need to finish out the game, and you need to, even if you know you're going to lose, you need to graciously accept that loss. So
Yeah, this is not tabletop simulator. You cannot just flip the board. You do, in fact, have to finish the entire game of Scrabble. Though I will say, I've had players once or twice in my career not finish a game against me, but there are penalties if you do that, and they're not pretty.
yeah,
I see chat graciously resign. I don't know if I'm going to resign. There's going to be nothing gracious about it. If I'm going out, I'm going out with a bang. But typically, I do try to finish the games when I start them at tournaments.
yeah. I feel like once I'm showing up to a tournament, like I want to play all. Like if I sign up for 31 games, I want to play them all out, even if I'm losing by a lot. I still want to uh, try to be my best every turn, but that's just me speaking right now. In a game when I'm losing by 300, yeah, maybe I want to rage quit.
Andy is really showing some interesting strategy. Now he's chosen to draw 4 E's again. Andy, I really wouldn't do that if I were you. I would try to get letters that make bingos. I know you can't draw power tiles because Joey's already pulled like every single one out of the bag, but at least try to get some consonants. They do help you score better. This is all, of course, tongue in cheek for those of you who are very new to Scrabble. You don't control what letters you draw to almost any extent in this game. Andy's just had a run of poor luck.
Yeah, yeah, and those games just sometimes happen. I mean, especially if you go 4-0 at the beginning, you could have gotten all of the tiles breaking your way, and maybe even more than you wanted, right? If you wanted to perfectly budget luck throughout all of your games, you'd want to get like just barely more than your opponent every game, rather than get all the luck one game and get none of the luck a different game. And so that can sometimes happen.
Scrabble giveth and Scrabble taketh away, and I think any person who has played in a Scrabble tournament totally understands what that means at this point, right? It is such a fickle game. Sometimes you can't do anything wrong. Even when you make mistakes, you draw better bingos the next turn. And sometimes, even if you do everything right, you just can't win the games.
Yeah, and so for those of you who, despite seeing all of Andy's decks, still want to learn about how to get involved in the tournament scene, we just threw a link in the Twitch chat to visit to learn more.
Joey thinking about playing Honen or Honens through that N. This is a tough situation for Joey because AE and ST are great bingo letters. But when you have a lead like this, especially on a board with this shape now, you don't really want to be fishing for a bingo. The traditional like strategy says, okay, I'm going to play OH somewhere for the most points, hold AE and ST, but that is how you blow a lead. That is exactly how you give away a game, is when you keep these 1 point tiles trying to bingo and you miss a couple turns in a row and your opponent comes fighting back. So a play like Honen is a decent idea for Joey. I just don't really like how it gives access to the top left of the board when otherwise I don't think this board is destined to get there. Make Andy do that. Make Andy give up the points to get to the top left of the board. He's the one who's losing. He's the one who should have the onus to open it up. I would just keep things small here and dare Andy to try to open things if I'm Joey.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, ideally, you'd want to play one spot above Honen if you were going to open up that part of the board, because at least that blocks this or obstructs the 7 lane that Andy just created above the first A in acai. But yeah, it's a tough decision point. Another thing to keep in mind here is the S on this board really isn't that good anymore. Normally, the S is one of the best tiles in the game, and Joey's actually going to elect to only keep an S by playing Anathol. Really nice find for 36 points. But the S isn't that great here anymore. The only spot for it for pluralization, it looks like, is off of Ruin, but you need to play through a K to use that.
And Joey with Anathol is showing he's really trying to lean into that turnover to draw additional blanks this game. I'm not sure if he's aware that he's already drawn both of them, and so there are no more that can be drawn. Again, tongue-in-cheek. Anathol's a great play. It scores a ton of points for Joey. I think many people in this situation would have dropped DOH, HO, and LO underneath the doles, holding AE and ST. And while that is a fine way to make this, or a fine approach to this turn, I think, again, it's the way you lose this game is you fish, you miss your fish, and then you open a line that your bingo or opponent bingo's in. Like, you don't want to do that. Now, how did Joey draw netters after playing or tenters, netters, whatever, after playing off 6 tiles? That is impressive. But
Yeah,
Anethol, I think, is a good play for
you
sure.
must approve of Joey's tile drawing strategy. We
Yeah,
know you were skeptical of Andy's, over vowels, over consonants. Joey just knows what to draw.
and this is what makes Joey a top expert is he knows how to draw good letters, and Andy just has a little bit more work, but he'll be humbled at this nationals a little bit, and maybe one day he too will learn how to draw good letters out of the bag.
We could, of course. But Andy, I'm wondering. So Unsee is a really nice parallel play to part of Ruin. So it would form Souunoes and Ane for 30 points. Do you think he sees that spot?
I mean, he's got Unsee set up on his rack, and it's not going to go anywhere else, so I do think he sees that. It's tough to give up on. In Andy's head, this is the last S because Joey again telegraphed after Doles, like super duper obviously that he's got another one. So this is the last S Andy will see this game unless Joey does something crazy like overdraw and get his S thrown back into the bag. It's hard to pass that up, but at the same time, there aren't any S opportunities on this board right now. Andy can certainly fix that by trying to create some lines. But 30 points when you're already down by 124 is also like necessary. You can't just fish and try to get a bingo. You can't play small and keep good leaves. You have to score now and hope that you luck into a bingo later on. So Unsee is a hard play to make, but I think he has to do it and just pray that he pulls a natural bingo down from the being blown to get back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, the pun obviously is once you find it, you can't unsee it. So
I would play a rim shot sound if I had one, but unfortunately, I'm ill-equipped as a commentator.
yeah, we need to get like a special like set of audio buttons. I feel like we could have a field day with those.
For those in the chat who ask who is Matt Canick, I am Matt Canick, right here, the commentator. I'll be here all day and all day tomorrow as well. Y'all are stuck with me.
Yeah, so he being Andy played Unsee. I think it seems like he didn't love the option, but he knew he just kind of had to do it. Keep it within 100, hope for the best, even though he knows Joey's likely sitting on an S.
Yeah, that's a great play by Andy. It's really tough to spot that. Just shows why I think he's earned his spot on board 1 today. He's really improved as a player over the last few years, and his rating has shot up. But you can't beat absolute luck, as Joey's demonstrating today. And Joey is just drawing like a monster. Almost every power tile, both blanks, and he just can't do any wrong. So, Andy, at this point, I'd absolutely throw in the towel. I would just play feet or free or something on top of routines and roll over and try to salvage some spread and then go into the nightlife that Nationals is so famous for. Maybe we'll see Andy try to blow some energy and see if there's any way he can get back into the game. But it's his win percentage has to be below 1% right now, and at this point I say just roll over and think about the next one. Think about what you're eating for dinner tonight.
Yeah, and Treff is an option that the chat has pointed out, and it looks like he might see that through the R in routines for a bunch of points. That's the top equity play, and it's a nice find by him.
This is a national Scrabble championship, or the newly named now Scrabble Players Championship, brought to you by Scrabble Go and by the North American Scrabble Players Association. This is our final game of day 1 of what is going to be a 5-day tournament. So if you're having fun with us today, tune back in tomorrow. We'll be starting at 9 o'clock Eastern time with day 2 of the tournament. We'll be here Monday, Tuesday, and have our grand finals on Wednesday as well. If you're having fun, if you're interested in Scrabble, check the chat right now. We've got some links for you about oh man, I can't type that in the chat right now. Somebody help me out. But we've got some links and some informational material about Scrabble clubs in your area, about places to play online. You can check out a lot more coverage of this tournament as well. Scrabble's super fun. It's been one of the coolest things I've ever done with my life, and I strongly encourage you to try playing some games and studying some words as well.
Yeah, and I love the puns in the chat. Saying that Treff wasn't a kosher play. Good job. Treff does mean the opposite of kosher. It means non-kosher. So good on chat for knowing that one.
Andy's got dweeb, and it fits under routines.
Oh wow, that's nice. Yeah. That yeah, and there's one tile in the bag, so he's down 150 at this point. Can't do much, but yeah, dweeb would be a fun little consolation prize of just fun word, scores a bunch.
I wonder if anybody's ever tried to play Jihad Eyes before. If the Z weren't already out, it'd be so fun to just drop that Z right there in that spot. Obviously, it is not a word, but it'd be a fun one to try.
Yeah.
While we're here waiting for this game to end, I'll try to give you some updates on what we've got in terms of standings from different divisions. Popping over to the Collins or international standings so far. In first place right now is Rashid Olajide Balogun from Dallas, Texas. He's at 5-1 plus 590. We have two other 5-1s in the Collins division as well, Ben Schoenbrunn and Joshua Castellano. Matthew Tunnicliffe, who was priorly the leader, is now at 4-2 and in fourth place, repping Canada. I'll pull up Division 2 for y'all as well. It looks like they're still quite a bit behind on their standing, so there's not much I can do to update everybody there. Division 3 right now in first place, we have two players undefeated, Joe Horowitz and Natalie Deku, with Billy Nakamura right on their heels at 5-1 with an enormous spread. He is already plus 774 through just 6 games in Division 3. Wow. And then in Division 4 as well, we have two undefeated players. Nathaniel Campos and Elaine Livers are both 6-0 as well. So lots of good Scrabble going on in a bunch of different divisions. Here, of course, is Division 1 in the TWL lexicon. Ori Swift currently in first place at 5-1, but it is anybody's tournament right now. We have 7 players featured at 5-1. Ori Swift, Michael Fagan, who we saw earlier on stream, Andy Hong, Scott Appel, Joe Edley, who's won several nationals before, Joey Kravchik, who's about to go to 6-1 with this victory, and Robin Pollack Daniel, who hasn't played a lot of tournaments recently, but was a fierce player for many, many years, and I'm super excited to see her back on the tournament scene as well. So that'll be fun. Hopefully we get to see some more of these players playing tomorrow. We've seen some great Scrabble so far.
Yeah, and also just want to shout out our thanks. I just put in the chat some thank you messages to Scrabble Go, Scopely, just the stream. We always love to give everyone live coverage over the board, and they make it possible. As Andy plays Wedger.
So that's going to be it for this game. That is going to guarantee that Andy at least gets to 300 points, which is always like a moral victory in a game where you do get drugged and you're unable to draw anything. Hey, well, at least we got there. Maybe Bewig would have been a better way to score a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. The way Andy drew, there's nothing going to happen this game. And I've heard over and over in Scrabble, about 25% of the games, no matter how hard you try, you're going to win. In about 25% of the games, no matter how hard you try, you're going to lose. And in the other 50%, that's what separates the Nigel Richards and the Will Andersons from some of the non-contenders. And this is one of the 25%, I think, for Andy, that there's nothing really he could have done differently. And for Joey, there's nothing he could have done differently. Sometimes you just get the letters and you kind of apologize and shrug to your opponent and you score 500 or whatever. And that's what this was. So,
yeah. And chat
Scrabble's
points
really
out that Wedger is actually invalid. It is a phony, but Joey doesn't challenge. So
Andy's
Yeah.
clock is still running right now. I'm curious as to why.
Wait, yeah, that seems. Oh well, Joey made a play. That's why.
Oh, is that why?
He played
Okay.
Amigo.
Joey's already played Amigo. Okay, so Andy's trying to figure out if he can go out now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he does have Beak at a minimum, I see, to the K.
He's Babe from the B.
Oh, and Abe from the B, ABBE.
Yeah, so that's nice, yeah.
So, and confirm those are the 3 plays available via Quackle. He could play Kibla if he's really feeling it, but I think one of those 3 should come down shortly.
Well, it's been fun having everybody here today. We expect Andy to make his final play of this game, and that's going to conclude our coverage for day 1 of the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship from Baltimore, Maryland. Oh, Andy elects not to go out, so but he does block Joey's out. Maybe that actually saves him a couple points of spread because he can play Za now. Blocked Joey's out, and he gets to score 11 next turn. Maybe it was better for him. Props.
Trier is still available through
I'm sorry?
T. Trier is still available through the T and the E.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Trier is still there. We will be back tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m., with round 8 of this Scrabble Players Championship. I believe tomorrow is going to feature NWL in the morning, and we may switch it up and play some Collins in the afternoon. Stay tuned for that, and we'll figure out exactly where we want to go. But yeah, lots of Scrabble to be played between some top players in the world. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in with us to watch. We hope to see every one of you back here tomorrow and Monday, Tuesday, and of course for our grand finals on Wednesday. It's been a blast. I'm Matt Kanik, signing off with Morris Greenberg. And
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your time.
That's a lot of words.
Oh. Yeah, I thought that.